Hello and welcome back to another video on the GoPrandall channel. I am doing Advent this year, which means a new video every other day. And today's video is the top films of 2020. Unlike most years where I've seen like hundreds of films, both on streaming services and in the cinema, this year I genuinely think I've seen about 20 films that were released this year. And lots of them didn't even make it onto the list. This isn't even a top 10 list, this is a top 9 list. Because lots of them haven't been that good, and I honestly just haven't watched that many movies this year. I don't know whether that's because maybe my attention span wasn't in it. It's been a very hectic year, although you'd think that I'd watch more films this year because of everything that went on. We had so much time off. I think I spent more time going back and actually watching older films, but I'm going to jump straight in. This is number 9. We have Birds of Prey, otherwise known as Birds of Prey, and the Emancipation of the Fantabulous Harley Quinn, and that name lasted as long as it took me to say it. But this released early in 2020, and this was actually the last film that I saw in cinemas before the first lockdown. And the story went, after Harley Quinn split with the Joker, she joined superheroes Black Canary, Huntress, and Renee to save a young girl from an evil crime lord who was played by Ewan McGregor, who I think did a very good job. Considering this is the only superhero film I saw this year, I think it did a really good job. This was also Margot Robbie's production company's first film, and I think they did an amazing job. It's better than any other DC film that I've seen this year. Although there was a few problems with it, like I said, I think that Ewan McGregor was a fantastic antagonist. I also think that I also think that Margot Robbie played Harley Quinn in such an amazing way, 10 times better than any other DC film I've seen her in. And all the supporting casts were also really good, and they all actually had a purpose for being there, unlike in Suicide Squad or even Justice League. So yeah, that's why it's number 9 on my list. I'm not sure if it's out on any streaming platforms, but if it does, I would give it a watch if you're a fan of any superhero movies. I don't think they make enough female-led superhero movies. Even one a year would be good, but obviously I think the best would be if they matched the amount of male-led superhero movies, because there's so many female superhero characters. Like, I'm just getting bored of all the generic Marvel lot, to be honest. At number 8 we have Extraction. This directed by Sam Hargreaves, and he's the head stunt coordinator at the MCU. The story of Extraction is Tyler Rake, a fearless black market mercenary who embarked on the most deadly extraction of his career when he's enlisted to rescue the kidnapped son of an imprisoned international crime lord. So this is Chris Hemsworth starring, and it's a generic action film, although obviously the stunt coordination was absolutely amazing. I couldn't really tell you that many plot points from it. I couldn't tell you any of the characters' names or any of the others apart from Chris Hemsworth and the boy he's trying to save. But saying that, I have seen it twice. It's a really fun film to just sit down and watch. A bit like what are the ones? Expendables, like those. It's like they're just funny action films, and they are really fun to watch. And they are bringing out a sequel, which has been announced. This is a Netflix original, if I didn't say, and I will be watching the sequel if that means anything. But that's why it's at number 8. At number 7, we have an Amazon Prime original, Borat 2, obviously starring Sacha Baron Cohen, and he wrote and did everything with it. This is obviously a sequel to the first Borat film, which I don't think will ever be topped, but I do think that this came close. A lot of people were worried that this wouldn't come anywhere close. It would just be a bad rehash like we've seen Disney do a lot in the past few years. But I think it did come close. Obviously, this follows Borat going back to America with his newfound fame, going through Trump, COVID, anti-vaxxers, conspiracists, and he doesn't hold back. Nothing stopped him. Although the world has changed since first Borat came out, we have become a lot more PC. Borat hasn't, and I don't think Sacha Baron Cohen held back at all, and he's such an amazing, clever man. Like what he did with that Rudy guy. If he can do that, we just need to think about what like the FBI can do. He's so clever, and it was hilarious as well. I laughed all the way through. I'll definitely be watching again. At number 5 is another Netflix original, I'm Thinking of Ending Things. It's by Charlie Kaufman, who also did Being John Malkovich and Eternal Sunshine. This is a bit of a complex one, and the story of it was, full of misgivings, a young woman travels with her new boyfriend to his parents' secluded farm. Upon arriving, she comes to question everything she thought she knew about him and herself. And I would say that about from 2 minutes in till about 2 days after, this film left me on the edge of my seat. It drew me in immediately. I'm not sure I fully understood it, but just the experience of watching it, I think, was fantastic. It felt like someone had taken... I don't want to sound too dramatic. I was going to say, it feels like someone was like, watch this, and they've sat you at a really awkward family meal and then not letting you leave, even though I could have, and it was 2 hours and absolutely flashed by. But just the way it was made and the ending, if I didn't mention it before, none of these films are going to have spoilers. I'm not going to spoil any of them. But the different ways that he brought the story together at the end, I thought was absolutely amazing. And although I didn't understand it, I definitely enjoyed it. So that's why it's at number 5. At number 4, we have a bit of a late contender, which is The Invisible Man. It was directed by Leah Whannell. I've not heard of him before, but apparently he wrote the first Saw movie and wrote Upgrade, which is also a really, really good film. And the story of this is when Cecilia's abusive ex takes her own life and leaves her his fortune, she suspects his death was a hoax. As a series of coincidences turn lethal, Cecilia works to prove that she's being hunted by someone nobody can see. This reminded me of an old slasher fic. It's a bit... It does remind me of generic horror film. I wouldn't call it generic, but lots of the traits that happen, I was annoyed a few times. It's like, oh, don't go in there, don't do that. It's obvious that that's going to be a bad idea. But it took a traditional idea and really put a modern twist on it, especially with the use of technology. When you figure out what is going on, I think it makes film 10 times better. Me and my flatmate always try and guess where films are going to go, and lots of the time we are right, but then we get films like this where it's so clever and intricate, we can guess all we want, we can pick on as much as we want, but it still beats us in the end, and it still comes back around, and you're like, what? I'm not saying it has a big twist. I hate when people go, oh, I love the twist at the ending. I'm saying throughout the whole film, it's so cleverly done, and the story is so intricate that you can sit there and write notes in it and try and pick up on it, but it's so clever, which is why I don't think it's a generic horror film. It is genuinely my favourite horror film of the year, and I watched Doctor Sleep this year, which was also a fantastic film. But yeah, that's number 4. At number 3, we have something that a few of you may have been waiting for, and that is Tenet. This is obviously by Christopher Nolan, who I'm sure you all know. And this story is a bit more complicated. Armed with only one word, Tenet, and fighting for the survival of the entire world, a protagonist journeys through a twilight world of international espionage on a mission that will unfold in something beyond real time. Straight off the bat, John David Washington and Robert Pattinson do an amazing performance in this film. They really tie the whole thing together, and it has to be tied together just because I wouldn't call it a mess, but I'd say the pacing and the editing of this film felt chopped up as one of my YouTube videos. There was times when scenes would end and I've only just started to understand what's happening. The audio for this, and I've heard lots of people have the same reaction, it was so loud in the cinema, I feel like I would have to have earbuds if I went to go and see it again. And for that reason, I didn't hear lots of what the dialogue was spoken. So there was lots of things that I missed, or I'm catching up on a few minutes afterwards. A second viewing would definitely do it well. But it was a spectacular thing to witness. It was a good thing to reopen cinemas with. That's the only film I've seen post-lockdown in a cinema, and it was spectacular, and the only place I'd want to see it is a cinema. And as much as I can bash on it for the audio, maybe a bit of the pacing, it was a Christopher Nolan, not his best work. I'd still probably pick a Batman or Inception off the shelf if I was going for it, but I'll probably watch it again. At number 2, a few people argue this is a 2019 film, but I have proof that I saw it in 2020, and that is The Gentleman, wrote and directed by Guy Ritchie, who you'll know from Snatch, The Sherlock Holmes, Man from U.N.C.L.E. He's absolutely fantastic. And the story of The Gentleman is an American expat who tries to sell off his highly profitable marijuana empire in London, triggering plots, schemes, bribery and blackmail in an attempt to steal his domain out from under him. Although I have been saying to a few of my friends recently that I'm sick of this film, that's purely because I saw it 4 times in cinemas. So if that doesn't tell you anything, it is a good film. This film made me fall in love with Charlie Hunnam and go and check out a few other things that he's been in. And I'm pretty sure he's from Borough. I'm not 100%. He's either from Borough or Newcastle. But he's a sick bloke, and he really... I wouldn't say he carries this film. Matthew McConaughey also does an amazing performance. And I'm sure there's people that I've forgotten about. Hugh Grant. Probably the best role I've seen Hugh Grant in a long time. But unlike Tenet, I think this was paced so well. The 2 hours flew by. Just when you catch it... See, instead of Tenet, when you're just catching up on things... In this, when you're just catching up on things, it's because that's how Guy Ritchie intended you to catch up on them. And it's like there's several storylines going on. And the way it's interconnected is absolutely fantastic. I don't know how much more I can really say on it. I didn't think it would be as funny as it was. I genuinely didn't think it would be that funny. But yeah, it was genuinely hilarious. So that's why it's at number 2. At number 1, another late entry, late enough that I actually watched it last night because it had been on my list for so long I knew I couldn't make this list without watching it. And that is another Netflix original, The Trial of the Chicago 7. This was directed by Aaron Sorkin, who wrote The Social Network and A Few Good Men. And if you don't know, this is the story of 7 people on trial stemming from various charges surrounding the uprising at the 1968 Democratic National Convention in Chicago, Illinois. This is my number 1 film. I loved it. As I was just saying with The Gentleman, 2 hours flew by. I didn't even know it was that long. The way they've structured this film is fantastic. They very easily could have gone riot, trial, aftermath, but the way they've done it and the way that they implement tools of different characters speaking in different areas. They have flashbacks. They have intercuts of flash forwards as well. And I didn't know the story going in, so I was waiting. I was on the edge of my seat the entire time. It was a mix between, I noticed this at one point, where I had like a lump in my throat because I was so nervous of what was happening, but also laughing because of Sacha Baron Cohen and Jeremy Strong, who were big standout characters for me. Also Eddie Redmayne. Who else was there? Jordan Joseph-Levitt. He was also fantastic. Frank Langella. I think that's how you say his name. But he was also spectacular as well. But yeah, it was just, as not knowing the story, I thought it would upset me and make me angry for what had happened, and of course it did. But the storytelling of the film was so amazing. I was so glad I watched it, and I think you should too. It's definitely my film of the year. And what I wanted to leave off on was a quote from Aaron Sorkin. In regards to the film's timely subject matter in 2020, Aaron Sorkin described the film as being more about modern day than the 1960s. He explained that the script didn't change to mirror the times mirrored the script. And I think that is quite powerful. So yes, they're my top 9 films of 2020. I think you should go and watch all of them because I love them all and I think you will too. Join me back in a few days and I'll be doing something else. I haven't got it yet, but I'm sure by the time it gets there I will. So please join me then. And thank you for watching every film. Please like, subscribe, all that jazz, and I'll see you in the next one.